And a million faces formed together, made for elevation. And the soldier won't surrender faith. This like a fire that never burns to embers. The voice of the unheard. Love is the answer.
I gotta speak it, believe it, that's how I feel inside.
I can't sit here quiet.
You can take my heart, you can take my breath. When you pry it from that cold dead chest.
This is how we rise up. Heavy as a hurricane, louder than a freight train. This is how we rise up. Heart is beating faster, feels like thunder. Magic static, call me a fanatic. It's our world, they can never have it. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance, you can't resist us. Can you hear me? Are you listening? Sleeping and the shadows could be making history. Through the fire, on the water, used to be a slave, but now you are a conqueror.
They can take my heart, they can take my breath. When they pry it from that cold dead chest.
This is how we rise up. Heavy as a hurricane, louder than a freight train. This is how we rise up. Heart is beating faster, feels like thunder. Magic static, call me a fanatic. It's our world, they can never have it. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance.
And welcome everyone to another episode of Straight Talk with Joe Vollano. Eventually I'll get me up on the screen. There I am. Welcome to another episode. I am glad you are all here. It is an absolutely beautiful day outside today. I hope each and every one of you got out there to enjoy it. But it is Sunday. It is 7 o'clock, and we have business to accomplish here. So again, welcome everyone. For those of you who are new to the show, I am, of course, Joe Vollano. I'm your host, your guiding light through the chaos. Someone put it differently, and I couldn't remember what they said. They said the guiding light of something. I forget what it was, but it was catchy, and I wish I remembered it. But of course, you know, my memory is not all that great as what it used to be. So eventually somebody will remind me of what it is. But, of course, there is one thing I am sure of, and that is that this show always works best when you guys are involved. So if you want to call in, 203-679-9610. I'm taking it maybe as we go along. I'm sure there's going to be some people that want to call in and try to maybe set things straight or give their opinion on things. Because obviously we're going to talk about the city budget. We're going to talk about the mill rate being set. And for some reason, Republicans went ahead and voted with the Democrats to set the mill rate at 32.99. Have no idea why they did that. They had voted against the budget last week, so there would be no reason for them to go ahead and set the mill rate at 32.99 now. So it doesn't really make much sense. We all knew that the mayor was not going to veto anything just from his comments that he made, but you know, we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. If you want to email us, obviously, straighttalkjv@gmail.com. You could do that right there, and I will watch it throughout the show. And, of course, if you're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitch, any of those, Facebook, you could always jump in on the message board, which I see is off and running. Nice to see everybody here today. So thank you, Trapper Don, for being here. Alan, Jennifer, Linda, all the normal Lisa's here. So again, welcome to the show. We have a lot to talk about over the next hour or so. And of course, first on the list is obviously the Meriden City Council adopted the mill rate for this year's budget. Again, was very proud that Republicans and We the People all voted against the budget a week ago. Listen, we all talked about this budget, and I know they're going to sit there and tell me that there is no fat to cut, that most of this was all contract driven. I get that. But at the end of the day, if the city is going to sit there and make these outrageous, and they are outrageous concessions, where some of them are making 5% increases, if not more, I understand where the council, where the Republicans and We the People are coming from. Because they should have voted no on the budget because they weren't even involved in these talks, which is crazy to me that they were not involved in discussions of union contracts. Why that was done without the city council this time is beyond me, and it is exactly something that we need to look further into. But to that extent, listen, it still is what it is. The budget is not right. It is not what it should be. And therefore, they made the correct call in voting against it last week. So why they would come ahead and Thursday and vote for the mill rate set the mill rate is beyond me. Beyond me. Either you're against this budget or you're for this budget. You're one or the other. You can't be against it one week and then be for setting the mill rate that correlates with the budget you just voted against. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Hopefully one of them will probably call in and try to tell us why they did it. But if not, then we'll have to go with our own conclusions, which is, again, mind-boggling to me. Because be consistent. If nothing else, be consistent. I always sit there and say, people aren't going to vote for Republicans if they act like Democrats. I say that every time, and I feel like a broken record that I have to say this every single year. Why would you vote for a budget or a mill rate that you believe is wrong, that you don't believe is correct and should not be forced upon the taxpayers? That I don't get. I'll never get that. So just be consistent with us. That's all we're asking. So maybe someone's going to call in and tell me what the hell is going on here and where I'm wrong. Maybe I'm off track. Maybe I'm off base somewhere. I mean, I've been following this a long time. I've been following politics and budgets for a very long time. And the city of Meriden seems to be the only ones that consistently vote in favor with the Democrats to pass budgets and to set mill rates. The city of New Haven, we may have only had one or two aldermen, but at least they voted no. At least give Republicans something to run on next year, if nothing else. And I say this all the time, because now you know the first thing Democrats are going to talk about. Well, and they do it every year. Well, we unanimously passed the budget. So what are you talking about? And they're going to do the same thing. Well, Republicans and we the people vote. Well, I don't think Bob Williams was there on Thursday, but Republicans voted for it. So they must agree with it. You have nothing to run on next year. You can't sit there and say you're against the spending when you vote to set the mill rate. That's the only thing they're going to talk about. And you can sit there and say till you're blue in the face, well, I voted against the budget. I voted against it, but no one cares what you did the week before. It's what you did now. And I think that's the one thing. They're not separate entities. One has to do with the other. The budget and the mill rate is quarterly one and the same. The mill rate let the Democrats turn around and pass their mill rate. By all means. Like I say this all the time. If Democrats are going to drive themselves off a bridge, why jump in the passenger seat? The budget and the mill rate are maybe separate votes, but they're the same damn thing. One can't live without the other. If we had a different budget, we have a different mill rate. So if you're against the budget, you can't be for the mill rate because you believe they're wrong. So I understand that they're two separate votes, but either, again, you're for one or against the other. You can't be for both. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. And that's the thing that bothers me with what goes on at city council. You know, I used to talk about this with Lou Graham because he's the best example of ever doing that. Where he says, oh, I'm against this, but then I vote for it. I just don't see it. Yes, I know you've been through this before. And again, to me, it still makes no sense. Maybe, like I said, maybe I'm off base. Maybe I'm off base here. Maybe I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I'm pretty damn sure I am dead on accurate. That a mill rate does not do anything without the budget. The budget and the mill rate are one and the same. They correlate with each other every step of the way. Because without one, you can't have the other. But I am disappointed because, like I said, we'll hear the same thing next year with Democrats. Well, Republicans voted for it. We the people voted for it. They were fine with the mill rate. And then again, it puts us on defense to sit there and try to explain it. And that's hard to do, especially after what you see with what this budget does. This budget here, this mill rate here, puts people into bankruptcy. Whether or not people want to believe that or not, I've been there. I've sat in front of these people who have seen massive increases in their assessments, who are going to be out on the streets, who are not going to be able to afford it. And they were hoping somebody was going to have their back. That's what they were hoping for. That's all they were hoping for. And people are going to remember this come next year. People are going to remember it because they're going to be paying these for the next year. They're going to be paying these higher prices, these higher taxes, and there's going to be renters that are going to be out on their ass. There's going to be renters, and they had, like I said, they had articles about this in the Record Journal, in the New Haven Register, in the Hartford Courant, on the Connecticut Mirror. They've had many articles about how rent is going through the roof because of all these new assessments. because of all these new assessments. Rents are going through the roof. And I think, again, the Record Journal had a piece on it that spelled it out on what's going to happen. People that have lived in these apartments for 5 to 10 years are being thrown out because they can't afford it. And again, landlords have to pay for this. Landlords have to pay for these higher taxes. Therefore, they have to pass it on. And we're going to see the effects of this. Like I said, it's not going to be right away, but we are going to see the effects of this. And all the taxpayers are looking for, all the citizens, all this only thing the citizens of Meriden are looking for is someone to stand up for them and say, enough is a friggin' enough. Enough is enough. And I thought we had that last week. We had that last week. We don't have that anymore. And people can sit there and say it's 2 different votes, whatever. There are people hurting. There are seniors on fixed incomes. There are individuals, there are single parents in this house, in this city, that are struggling every day to make ends meet with inflation, with food costs, fuel, food, every cost you could possibly imagine going up. This is the last thing they needed. Because like I said, at the end of the day, their family comes first. The city taxes come last. And I think we're in for I think we were already in a perfect storm. We are already in a perfect storm. This just solidified it. And God forbid house prices crash over the next couple of years. We're really in for a shit storm. So listen, I'm trying not to be too harsh tonight and expressing my dissatisfaction with what occurred. But the people are going to speak very loudly on this next year. Now, will a referendum happen this year? Maybe. Maybe there'll be a referendum. I have no idea. Should there be a referendum? Probably. Probably. Do I hope someone starts one? Yeah. Yes, I do. Because I believe in second chances. And I believe that you guys all on the city council deserve a second chance to make right on behalf of the people. I agree, Gail. I'm all for a strong mayor. I'm all for a strong mayor. Will that happen in our lifetime? No. No, we probably won't. Because listen, the Democrats are and I said this many a times on this show, Democrats will never give up the shield they have with the mayor. And that's what they have. And again, we've talked about this. Because every time something bad happens, everybody runs and blames the mayor. Not knowing, because again, most people in this city have absolutely no idea how the government of the city works, which is beyond me, which is absolutely beyond me. They have no idea that the mayor has no power in this city other than veto power, which he chose not to use. And hopefully he'll come on sometime and explain why he didn't use it. But to me, from what it sounds like, he was all for it, especially the funding for the education department, for the Board of Ed, which, listen, we spent $218 million on the Board of Ed. For the entire budget of the city of Meriden is $208. So we spend $10 million more for the Board of Ed than to run the entire city. Tell me if anyone else sees a problem there. I apologize for my hand. If you're seeing my hand here, I was spray painting since it was such a beautiful day out there today. I was spray painting one of the light posts out front, and I can't get it off my hand. So if you see me waving my hand and you sit and go, oh, he has dirty hands today. It is spray paint. It is black spray paint. So I apologize if you're looking at it. So $218 million for education, $208 million to run the entire city. But they're not getting their fair share. If anyone else doesn't see a problem with that like I do, they're not paying attention. Because every time you hear from the Board of Ed and when it comes to the city, there's like, the city's not funding. Well, yeah, because remember this. Every time the city allocates money to the Board of Ed, they cannot take it back. Every single time the city gives money, allocates money to the Board of Ed, it cannot take it back next year. It is forever. You forever have to give that money, which is why the city council has always been hesitant to turn around and give money to the Board of Ed. Plus, the Board of Ed gets an increase in grants every year, whether it's the Alliance grant, which is any of these foundations that gives money, and the state and the federal government gives money. Those go up every single year. So for them to sit there and say they're flat funded, which they love to say every year, is absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. But this year they got a 5.6% increase in funding this year. Again, that's 5.6% we can never take back. They always get it every year without debate. But that's what this city council is made up of. They think it's okay. It's just not their money. It's your money. Brody would love to say, well, it's $5 here. It's $10 here. He loves to say that. Well, in the grand scheme of things, it's only $5. The taxpayer is only going to see a $5 increase. Yeah, but you times that by 10, 15, 20 different projects, and next thing you know, you see a big difference. So back to my original point, is that they're all going to say, well, it was all contractual. Well, listen, if you're giving these kind of increases to the unions of the city, listen, at the end of the day, people got to start getting cut. If they want this kind of money that the city can't afford, there has to be a little give and take. The city can't afford it. The people of this city can't afford it. We'll be the first ones. They'll be really the liberals on the council, the first one to say we're a distressed city. The people can't afford it. Then why do you keep screwing them every year? Why do you keep screwing them every year? But then again, Republicans and we the people jump right on board. Maybe not we the people. Bob Williams usually doesn't go with them. And I don't think he was there. It's just crazy to me. And listen, I know they're going to be mad at me. It's okay. I'm here to, this is straight talk. And I know there's already a sentiment out there. Oh, Joe doesn't like Republicans. Joe doesn't like this. Joe doesn't like that. I don't like anyone who's not looking out for the taxpayer. That's where I draw the line. And people can sit there and have whatever narrative you want of me. I don't care. And I think that's one thing that bothers everybody. And I don't think it's just city councilors. It's anyone in the city. Apparently, if I walk into City Hall and have a conversation with somebody, it gets all over. Oh my God, Joe's here. What happened? Or who's he after? You know what? I kind of like that when I walk into City Hall. I won't lie. Because you know what? I think it keeps people on their toes. Because I don't care what party you're from. I don't care what gender you are, your race, ethnicity. I don't care about anything. The thing is, I'm so blind to all that nonsense, and I won't let it sit there and influence my decision making and the questions I ask, because at the end of the day, I don't care. And Lisa, you're exactly right. It's all about accountability. And that's one thing that City Hall has none of. There is no accountability. And that needs to change. And I think the only way you change that is to get a strong person that is elected to office to have the power, not someone who is appointed. Not who is appointed. And that's why we need a strong mayor. $218 million is from the Board of Ed themselves. You can go ahead and check it. My numbers are dead on accurate. Between city, state, and federal funding, $218 million for Board of Ed every year. My numbers are not wrong. And we spend $208 million with this budget here to run the entire city. We have some serious issues in this city that need to be addressed. The mayor is an elected position, but he has no power. You need someone who is elected that could change, that has power, that can make changes in City Hall. You can't do that with someone who's appointed by the council. That is basically a puppet. That is basically a puppet. The one true person you had in there that actually tried making changes, you saw what happened. And that was Guy Scaife. Which we have not forgotten about Guy Scaife, just so long as you know. Just as long as you know, Guy Scaife has not been forgotten. He was the one person that tried making real changes in this city. And look what happened to him. But like I said, this was disappointing. I thought we were going to have something to run on next year as far as hitting Democrats and liberals with their spending habits and not looking out for the taxpayers. But that evaporated in 1 week, unfortunately. And that's a shame because I thought we were going to see better. So, in other news, since we already got that done, how can we give the mayor? Well, you're talking about two different things. If you're talking about Aaron Stewart in New Britain, yeah, you need charter reform. In order to get the charter reform, it would take a lot to get a charter reform. Plus, it takes 2/3 of the council to sit there and vote for it. So, but like I said, once you open the charter, it's not just for one thing. If you open up the charter, you open up the charter for everything. So there's pros and cons to it. And sometimes you have to sit there and decide now with charter reform, do the pros outweigh the cons? And I think right now, yes. I think at this point, I think we need to. I think things have gotten so out of control in City Hall. I definitely think charter reform is the only way to go ahead and fix what needs to be fixed. Yeah, but again, they have a strong mayor over there, so it's a little interesting. So, listen, at the end of the day, it is what it is. This is what we have. This is what we have right now. This is what we're stuck with right now. So our jobs as citizens, as informed citizens, is to hold those accountable for what they do. That's our job. And for a long time, the people of this city have not held those people accountable. And so when we talked about referendums, we did a referendum, 3 years now? 3 years ago. It passed. And again, it had a ton of Democrat support, a ton of independent support. But then came election time, And everybody went back to their corners and said, no, I can't vote for a Republican. So they voted for Democrats. They went right back to their old things of what they were doing before. To me, at this point, I would like to open up the charter, make it a strong mayor, and have no political parties next to the names of people. I forget what other town does that. If you want to run for office, but with no R or D next to your name. And just sit there and do it based on what your vision for the city is, what your vision for anything is. Because I think for so long, people are just like, oh, I can't vote for a Republican in this city. And they don't. They just go based on, again, I always tell people when they run for office, the biggest thing to overcome in this city is having an R next to your name and overcoming the D. That is the biggest challenge. But there shouldn't be political parties next to anybody's name. Just go based on what they say and what they've done. That's how I ultimately would love to see that. Will that ever happen? I highly doubt it. But if charter reform is opened, it is one thing that can be changed. I think it is great on both sides. Listen, there are some Democrats I like. There are some Democrats maybe not in office right now, but have been in office in the past that I have liked. He does have he could do a line item veto if he wanted to, but he decided not to this year. He liked the budget. Listen, it is what it is. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's we as taxpayers, we as residents, we as voters that have the job of holding people accountable at the end of the day. It's our responsibility. It is our responsibility to hold people accountable and to hold our elected officials accountable. And again, that's just one thing that this city does not do very well for whatever reason. I think it's strictly because of the DNR. And I would love for that to just go away because I think people would love what Republicans have to say. I do. So, on that note, speaking of elections coming up, obviously the Democrats have their conventions coming up. Republicans have their conventions coming up this week. So by next week's show, we'll know everybody that's running for office, at least that have been declared. For the 13th district, which is my race, the Democrats had their convention last week, and apparently there's been a third candidate that has jumped in the race. So now we have one from Meriden, Middletown, and now Cheshire that has jumped in. And he is a councilman from Cheshire. I believe his name is John. They didn't say his first name. Eek or Etch. Eeke? E-C-K-E. However you pronounce that. Again, I apologize. I'm not trying to butcher your name on purpose. But he's been in politics for over 20 years. Obviously, he used to work for the Susie O. York Company over there here in Meriden as their comptroller. So he is from Cheshire. And apparently they've all... Can you name all... You want me to name all three? Okay, so you already know of Jan Hochendell. Again, I apologize if I'm not intentionally trying to destroy your name here. She's from Meriden. She is the AFT, the American Federation of Teachers president. And then you have Anthony Fanciato. I'm taking it. He's from Middletown, and he is a councilman over in Middletown. and he received all the Middletown votes. And then he is a adult education administrator. And then you have Michael Eakey of Cheshire. And he, again, is a comptroller. So, you have three in the race. Obviously, Jan Hochendale grabbed the nomination because Meriden just has an enormous amount of delegates compared to the other towns. So it will be very interesting, though, to see how that all works out, how that all plays out, because it's now town versus town, apparently, other than Middlefield. Middlefield's the only one that doesn't have a contender in the race. And like I said in the article, listen, it doesn't change our strategy. What my job will do is maybe just kind of throw some things out there for them to debate. Because listen, we already know what we're talking about. We're talking about the Police Accountability Bill. We're talking about CRT. We're talking about all sorts of different things that affect the people and the taxpayers. We're talking about the high prices of fuel here in the state and in the country, and what we can do about it here and what they are doing about it here. So we have a wide range of things we're talking about. They're talking about who's the best for their special interest. And apparently it all goes around education. You know, who's the biggest supporter of education and the educational unions, and that's what they're fighting about. I'm the best candidate to represent them, where the taxpayers are being left behind. Nobody's talking about the taxpayers other than us. And that's something I find extremely discerning going on over there on the Democratic side. So there's more to this state than education. Much more. So again, there's two different things. Not to get back onto the thing. There's the vote on the budget, which they voted against, and then there's to set the mill rate. And then to set the mill rate is a separate vote, which is what they all voted for. Don't know why, but they did. So, because to me, if you voted against the budget, you can't be for that mill rate. Obviously, you wanted a lower budget, which would have made it a lower mill rate. So you can't be for one and then and against one and then be for the other. That just doesn't make any sense. But that's basically what we were talking about. So again, but counter to the 13th Senate race, listen, they're all talking about education. They're all talking about who's best for the unions, because obviously that's all they really care about at this moment in time. Because again, unions have a very strong primary presence, and you're going to hear that in one of the clips from one of the local news things that I listened to today. But it'll be interesting to see where this race goes, because it's really going to set the tone for the voting base, really for the independents. Are the Democrats going to go far left, or are they going to go more towards the center? And that's really interesting. I'm really interested to find out where they go, because to me, if you're talking about the typical progressive here in the city of Meriden, or the typical Democrat in the city of Meriden, unfortunately, they're going far left. And they're going more left every year. I mean, look at this council. This council is probably the most far left council I've ever seen. And this budget that they pass is a prime example of that. So, will they go to the far left where their base is, and the ones that are going to come out? Or are they going to go more towards the center and electability? No, listen, I'm not far right. Listen, I'm conservative, no doubt. But the GOP ain't going far right. To me, it's all about small government, personal responsibility, and looking out for the best interests of those I represent, which would be the 13th district. That's what I care about. I don't care about special interest. I will not take special interest money. I never have, I never will. So I won't take money from lobbyists, because I know the rule. I know the game. You take money from them and they want something in return. my only allegiance and my only alliances are with the taxpayers and the voters of the area that I represent. That's what I think everyone should be at. And we'll see. We'll see where everybody's at. Because it's going to be very interesting to see where they pull their money from. Because with 3 candidates, they're all going to be vying for the state funds. So it's going to be very interesting to see where their $17,800 comes from. And we're going to be looking. We're going to be watching as they file. And the next filing's in the end of July. So we'll be watching it. So it's going to be very interesting to see where it all goes. But yeah, so that was done last Tuesday. Last Tuesday, they nominated Hachado for the 13th, and obviously there's going to be a primary between the 3 of them, and we'll see where that goes. Obviously, we have no primary on the Republican side. Whoever wins that on August 9th will run against us. To me, it means that we have a couple extra months by ourselves to sit there and tell the people where we're coming from and where we want to see it go, where we want to see Connecticut go, and what do we want to see happen in Hartford. That's going to be my goal. While they sit there and yell about who's a better liberal and who's better for the unions, we'll be sitting there telling you how we're better for the people of this 13th Senate district. That's what we'll be doing. So we'll go from that. But on to other Democratic news and Republicans too. Obviously, we all talked about the conventions. The conventions were last week. And obviously, they had 10 days from the end of the convention to determine whether or not they're going to run up for a primary. So they have 10 days. So this Wednesday coming up will be the final day for them to make a decision to file for a primary. And the most interesting one, and I want you to hear the 2 sides. And we talked about this last week. I want to hear what they talk about on the Republican side. And the Republican side, they talk about conservative versus moderate. On the Democratic side, I'm just going to play the 2, and you tell me the difference and this will really tell you in a nutshell what is wrong with politics today. Here's the first clip. This is the Republican side.
The politics of the moment says that she wins easily, both because she has the better recognition, she is the better campaigner, she has the most experience, and because she's a moderate, and the other 2 are conservative. And while the Republican electorate is conservative in a primary, only 420 or so thousand registered Republicans. These are not the moderate independents. They are conservative. You have 2 conservatives splitting that vote, both of whom have a very interesting and similar backstory. The problem is, of 400,000 voters, you figure 100,000 or so will show up at the primary. We got a little taste of summer weather on Friday. It's not looking like election time. It's feeling like some other thing. Get out and vote, right? So, you know, on an August Tuesday, maybe you're not going to see a big crowd. That means with 3 people in the race, 40 to 45,000 votes could win it for somebody if they all poll reasonably well. And that means that if Themis Claridis isn't careful, one of those other 2 opponents will get his or her votes out, and it could be a surprise. But just on front door political issues, she should have an easy win to face Richard Blumenthal.
So just to break that down, we're talking about where we see this country, where we see this state, where we see it going in the future. And again, you have a moderate with Themis, who, again, it won the nomination for the U.S. Senate because you have 2 conservatives going that did meet the primary requirements, and they are both primary. And we talked about this last week, that I'm afraid that the conservative vote is going to be split by the 2, and really they should join forces together to help defeat Themis, who I think is not a very good candidate, especially if you're a Republican. She's pro-choice, and she's for gun control. 2 of the biggest things about Republicans that we stand for. And to me, I find that as a huge problem, which is why I say Laura Levy is the best chance for Republicans to get a conservative down into Washington. So that's where Republicans are coming from. So that's where Republicans are coming from. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about who is the best to represent Republicans as a whole. But this is the Democratic side, and this is what really bothered me and really makes me a little scared about the state of politics today on the Democratic side.
Let's move over to the Democratic side. We're going to look first at the Secretary of the State race. We have the endorsed candidate, Stephanie Thomas. We have Hilda Santiago and Maritza Bond, who have qualified for the primary. You said one interesting thing in this is labor support.
Yes. Senator Matt Lesser had significant labor support. Hilda Santiago has significant labor support. If she's in, Senator Lesser is out. He's opted out, seeing the ethnic and racial and gender tea leaves. He opted out. So, and he was perceived as one of the front runners. Representative Hilda.
So let's stop there for a second, because that's very, very, very important. Very, very important. That, in a nutshell, tells you what's wrong with the Democratic Party. That's one thing that's troubling with the Democratic Party, is that it doesn't matter. And again, Lesser fell on the sword of identity politics. It does not matter whether you're the front runner. It does not matter if you're the most qualified. All the decisions that's made is for the Democratic side now, which is very troubling, is do you fit the identity that they're looking for? Lesser lost that race because he's white. He knows it. His staff knows it. And I think they're pissed off about it. But at the same time, they don't. He also is a state senator who is going to be up for re-election again this year. He doesn't want to piss those people off, so he can't say it. He lost not because he is the most qualified. If you hands down, he was the most qualified person. What can be said for the same? What same can be said for Republican? What? They are basing their votes and their ticket based off what you look like. That is extremely troubling to me, because that's not the way it's supposed to be. Having a race war in the party and not electing someone who is obviously the most qualified because they're not the right gender or racial, very disturbing. Very disturbing. You don't see that. That's the huge difference. Huge difference. Martin Luther King would roll in his grave, because it's not being based on the character. It's being based on the color of their skin. Very, very disturbing that's the way that our friends on the left pick their candidates. That's how they pick their endorsements. And I'm very interested to see what Lesser does. I'm very interested to see what Senator Lesser does. Does he take this as a take back moment and take a step back and say, holy crap, what is our party become? What has our party become? Where no longer your character and your ability and your qualifications no longer become an issue. It's only based on what you look like. It's a very, very slippery slope the Democrats are starting to get themselves on. And to me, if I was a minority, I'd be friggin' offended by it. I'd be offended by it. And I hope they are. I hope they really are. Because they should be offended by it. But that's how Democrats run now. That's how the far left liberals have decided. He's accomplished a hell of a lot more as a senator. And again, he's been at the forefront of trying to do everything liberals have wanted to do. Expand absentee balloting. He's been at the forefront of it. He has been a great, great liberal. He has done everything liberals have wanted. He has done everything. He would have been their dream candidate. But Governor Lamont said, and the chair and the leadership of the state Democratic Party have said, we want diversity on the ticket, and we're going to do that at any means necessary. So since he saw Lamont, Bicewicz, they already had Tong, who is Asian, and they already had Russell, who is African American. So they needed again another African American, or they wanted a Hispanic. They were very clear about that. They were very clear about that. It's not like again, the thing with the liberals of today and the Democratic Party and the state Democratic leadership, they're not trying to hide it anymore. They're not trying to hide it anymore. They're very open about it. Listen, Donald Green tried that back in 2014 or 2015 when I was running. He said, look at our table and then look at their table. It's like, what are you talking about? Is that really what you want to base your vote on? You really want someone to base their vote on? Don't vote for them if they're more qualified. Vote for me because I'm the same color as you. To me, that is absolutely friggin' crazy to me. Crazy to me. Just like, I love to know what you're talking about. I haven't seen a single Republican do that. I have not seen a single Republican turn around and try to play a race war or anything. Democrats love to do it. And usually it works for them because usually Republicans will run from them. Republicans will run from that. You call them a racist, you call them anything. Oh, they go running for the hills. Again, that's one thing they hate about me because I don't. Listen, this is straight talk. We talk about the third rail issues. We talked about abortion last week. We're going to talk about the LGBTQ next week. We're going to talk about that next week. We don't run from the issues. We have honest discussions about it. No, they don't. Do I look like a country club membership list? That's ridiculous. I am definitely not one of those country club membership lists. That's crazy to me. But this is the state of politics today. They have us playing all these little wars with each other while they're doing all the shady crap behind our backs. While they're doing all the shady stuff behind our backs. I tell you, in fact, I say this 1,000 times over and over again. Washington, D.C., I don't trust any of them, Republican or Democrats. I don't trust a very few, a handful. Maybe I can count on one hand how many I trust in D.C. Because, and the media, they want us playing these wars. They love identity politics because it keeps us focused on that and not on what's really going on behind the scenes, where they're both screwing us. And that's a fact. No, absolutely, Jason. I can't disagree with you more. I mean, I can't agree with you more. Well, I think Malcolm X said it the best. I believe it was Malcolm X said it the best. They are, white liberals are the most dangerous, especially to the African American community. But that's a whole different show altogether right there. We could go on. We could talk about that for hours on the destruction of the nuclear families and everything else. But this is where we're at. And it is scary to think that this is how politics are being played now. Let's talk striper fishing. I would absolutely love to. I love striper fishing. But unfortunately, thinking of striper fishing, because obviously boating season's coming up, my favorite part of the year. I love boating season because obviously I fill boats for a living. That's what we do. Filler Up is the only company in the state that fills boats with diesel and gas. So obviously, these fuel prices are very concerning to people like myself, and to the people that obviously that I service. So we're going to start with gas prices here. I'm going to cut this over. So here's the latest gas prices for the state. Now, again, there is no shortage in gas. At the docks, yes, Don. I fill them right at the docks. You don't ever have to leave don't even have to move your boat. Go right to the marina, fill it up right in your slip. But here's the issue that we're having. We're having two different issues. One is a supply for the diesel side, which we'll get into more depth in a second. We're going to do gas first. Gas is going up based on, obviously, the time of year, and there is starting to become a little bit of a shortage as some refineries start switching over back to diesel to try to get that back up and running. But if you look at what you're looking at now, $4.46 a gallon is now the new U.S. average. Now, we're paying around $4.30 average here in the state of Connecticut, and that's only because we're minus to 25 cents. So you add the minus 25 cents, and we're above the national average. We're at somewhere around, let's see, so 25 cents. So we're at almost $4.60. That's crazy. And again, they can sit there and try to call this on just what's going on in Russia, but look at it from 11/15, that's just after the election of Joe Biden, and it has steadily went up. Now, they can sit there and say, yes, Russia kind of exacerbated the issue, and they made it worse in the short term, but you see that line. It was going up. It's just a matter of whether it was going up. I guess Barack Obama said it best. I'm okay with $7 gas. I just wish it didn't get there as fast as it did. Does anyone remember that? Back in 2012? That was Barack Obama's quote. Because liberals love high gas prices. Because liberals think that if you pay high gas prices now, you could somehow afford a $70,000 electric car. It is the craziest thing to me. Or they think that you're magically going to be able to take mass transit, which none of it ever happens. If you can afford a Tesla or an electric car, you're not worried about gas prices. No, foreign countries refuse to increase production. And why would they? Why would a foreign country who really doesn't like the United States turn around and help the United States when we're weak? Because let's not BS each other. Every other country in this world believes the U.S. is weak under Joe Biden. We already know he doesn't know where he is half the time. We already know he doesn't know what he's saying half the time. Why in the hell would any foreign country look to help out the United States when we're weak? They wouldn't. It would be dumb for them to do that. They will kick us while we're down. OPEC is going to kick us while we're down. Plain and simple. And if you're in business, you would do the same thing. Like right now, I was going to wait till later on. So this is one of our suppliers. I crossed everything out because I don't want you guys be emailing people. This is a notice that I got back on 11th. This is diesel, not on gas. Gas you can get plenty of. But diesel, unless you're contracted, which means if you're a big guy and you're contracting hundreds of thousands of gallons out of these terminals down in New Haven, if you're doing that, you can still pick up your fuel because you already paid for it. But now diesel, you can't even pick up down in New Haven because there's a shortage and they have to hold what they're contracted for. Now, luckily for me, I have other suppliers, but there are a lot of little companies, a lot of little oil companies. So if you use an oil company that's not filler up, which I don't know why you would ever do. I don't know why you would ever not use filler up for your heating oil needs. or for your gas and diesel needs on your boats. But if for some strange reason you do use a different company, they can't pick up heating oil. Now, luckily for me, I have some because I tried to simply be aware of what the conditions going on, and I bought some earlier. It is a great plug. Thank you. But a lot of these small oil companies are going to go out of business. They're going to go out of business this year. Now, again, back to OPEC and them not increasing production. You don't help someone while they're down if you consider them weak. You put your foot on their throat and finish them off. Same things in business. Listen, I've been in this business, only since 2018. I've already picked up 2 other companies because the conditions are right. And I'm sure this summer, I'll probably pick up 1 or 2 more because of this situation. Because they're not going to be able to afford it. They're not going to be able to sustain not having fuel to deliver. So the smaller guys are going to go out of business. And the bigger guys are going to buy them up. But that's just the nature of business. That's the nature of even world politics. A foreign country that doesn't like us already is not going to help us out. An organization in OPEC is not going to help us out. And if you thought anything other, that's crazy talk. But then we look at diesel. Diesel per gallon is at 5.11 average. If you're here in the state of Connecticut, you're at 6 something. It's crazy. Jason, talk to me after the show. Listen, I've been doing that. I've been putting 10, 20 gallons in people's tanks just to get them going. If you're good customers of mine and you've been loyal customers of mine over the last couple of years, I've been putting 20 gallons in just to get you guys by for the month, especially if you're only using hot water. And most companies won't do that. But obviously, like I said, if you're a loyal customer or a filler up, I do that for my customers because I care about my customers. And I hope other companies will do the same for theirs. This is craziness. We are living in such crazy times right now. I feel like it's like we're living in the 70s now. It's like we're living in the Jimmy Carter era. Don't worry about it, Jason. I got you, buddy. I got you. But we're living in the 70s. And if things keep going the way they're going, we're going to be back there to lines at the gas pump. And I don't want to be there. And it's going to get worse, and it is going to get worse before it gets better. Because with the high peak driving season coming up, gas is going to start to get a little scarce. But paying these prices for diesel, $6.34 on average in the state of Connecticut. Remember, everything you have in your house at some point came through a barge that uses diesel, came by truck that uses diesel. And at these prices, that price has to be passed down. Those increases have to be passed down to the consumer. Has to. Or else companies will be out of business. Again, we live in very, very crazy times. Food costs are already skyrocketing. Now, you can only imagine what's going to happen next. Again, once these prices hit, listen, we're going to be, for diesel, we will be at $7 by the time we talk next week. No doubt. No doubt about it. And for boaters, I feel for you. For diesel, you're already over $7 a gallon. And for gas, you're already over $5. So will it hurt companies like mine this summer? Most likely. Most likely. But again, that's my, that's the business I'm in. And I prepare for things like this. I have to. That's the only way you stay in business. So enough of gas. And we do have baby formula shortages. So obviously we do have baby formula shortages here. But do you know where there's not a shortage of baby formula? On the southern border. You know who the biggest supplier of baby formula is right now? The biggest purchaser? The United States government. You want to know where the baby formula went? Ask the United States government, because they bought most of it. And it's all down on the southern border. As they get prepared for Title 42 to be no longer. In fact, 3 days, I believe it's no longer being enforced. So I wanted to get to another story here on how crazy things are getting, but we could talk about this next week, since we're going to talk about LGBTQ plus stuff and all that other kind of stuff. We're going to talk about these middle schoolers who are accused of sexual harassment for not using the proper pronoun. So we'll talk about that next week, along with Title IX. We'll talk about that next week. But obviously, this week starts, I believe it already started, for Law Enforcement Appreciation Week. Obviously, here on the show, we are huge supporters of our police department. No matter whether you're the city, state, federal, we love all police officers. We think you can do it's become a thankless job. And I appreciate everything that you guys do. And I wish you guys all the best. Got the final numbers from last year. 178 police officers killed in the line of duty last year. 62 of them with at the course of firearms, 58 at traffic deaths, and then I believe it was 60 something of unrelated issues. But it just proves again, the commitment they have to keeping us safe. And whether or not you are 100% with law enforcement or not, it doesn't matter. The fact that when any police officer loses their life, if you are that concerned about the victims that may perish at the hands of a police officer, which is very rare, you should be just as outraged at the fact that we have lost 178 fine men and women last year alone. And I pray for them all the time. Again, they do a thankless job to people who, again, they'll put their lives on the line for the same people that are sitting there denouncing them on a daily basis. And for that, there is no words to show my appreciation to them. But we will end this show tonight with a song for our police officers that I found online, which I thought was a great song. And we'll close out the show with that tonight. But again, to all of our law enforcement officers throughout the city, the state, and the country, we love, here at Straight Talk, we love each and every one of you. We thank you for the thankless job you do. And we show our appreciation for you. Again, we love you. We wish you well. God bless you. And obviously, God bless this great country of ours. I will see you guys all next week. I love you guys, and I will talk to you later.
Red and blue lights cover 75 like a train. Miles of cars full of people with nothing to say. The sun's out, you think that it's just another November day. Oh, and I can't help but be mad knowing I'll leave and you're gonna stay. They called me on a cell phone telling me there's an officer down. Talk to